be honest, no, I didn't think that. I just wanted to play as many matches as possible. That's why, sometimes it's not the easiest playing qualis, but it helps you in the main draw.
As we celebrate our multiculture, and I tell you what, we have some good Filipino whānau in the building tonight, ladies and gentlemen.
In just 58 minutes, Eala completely smashes Coco Gauff, and the audience goes crazy. No one anticipated it. Not Gauff herself, not the supporters, nor the commentators. The energy was different from the first serve. Electric, colder, and sharper. Eala was conveying a message in addition to playing tennis. Every reply was met with fire, and every shot sliced through the air like a blade. Gauff's confidence gradually eroded as her rhythm broke. With each rally, the throng increased, their incredulity building into a shout. And silence gave way to commotion when the last ball crossed the finish line. The past had just been altered. Beneath that 58-minute masterpiece, however, is an unexpected tale of rivalry, pressure, and covert retaliation. Because sometimes the goal of domination is to disprove everyone rather than to gain power. There was silence prior to the eruption. Just before the game started, there was an odd, unsettling silence throughout the arena. Silence that seems to be a warning. Everyone was familiar with Coco Gauff, the world-conquering young prodigy who effortlessly carried the burden of expectations. A Grand Slam winner, a representation of the sport's future. And on the other side of the internet stood Vekić Eala, who was calm, collected, unknown to some, and undervalued by many. She did not make headlines. She wasn't the most popular. However, she was the unanticipated storm. Eala had been quietly constructing something for months. She spent late nights watching match tapes, endured long sessions in the sweltering sun, and overcame moments of doubt. She was born in the Philippines, where tennis is a passion rather than a promise. Where every failure feels personal and every success feels like revolt. Eala had been informed from the start that players from her region of the world don't succeed. Too small a stage, too far away, too few resources. However, she didn't want to rise to the top and disprove them. She felt she belonged there, which is why she wanted it. She now stood opposite from the lady who represented everything she was told she couldn't be on this court in the dazzling lights. Coco Gauff is a warrior on the court, the face of contemporary tennis, the audience favorite, and the sweetheart of endorsements. It was not meant to be a close game. One-sided betting lines were used. A simple victory was predicted by commentators. However, Eala had a quiet type of rage in her eyes when she moved to the baseline for her warm-up. She wasn't present to take part. She was there to assume control. Her coach murmured something that only she could hear in the corner of her team. Ignore her identity. Recall your identity. It was more than just counsel. Ignition was the cause. As they waited for Gauff's trademark enthusiasm to illuminate the court, the audience muttered restlessly. The cameras flashed. Reporters jotted down notes. However, Eala's first serve cracked like thunder because it was quick, clean, and exactly on the edge. Even Gauff appeared a little taken aback. Nobody was ready to believe the story that was revealed in that first game. Eala was not responding to Gauff's cadence. It was dictated by her. Every step was planned, and every rally was measured. And the tension started to change in a matter of minutes. The audience, accustomed to applauding Gauff's supremacy, began to notice something strange. Uncertainty. Experienced admirers recognized the expression in Eala's eyes. Not nerves, not haughtiness, just such unadulterated concentration that it appeared nearly icy. The narrative of every instance in which she had been disregarded and every competition she had participated in under a false identity was contained within that concentration. It was more than just a match. It was a proclamation. The audience still had hope for a comeback when the first set got underway. With Gauff, they always did. Her legend was her tenacity. However, there was a murmur in the air that got louder with each point. This girl, who is she? Eala's shots had become declarations by the time she broke serve for the first time. Every rally ended in disbelief, and every winner elicited gasps. She wasn't grinning or rejoicing. She was meticulous, concentrated, and locked in. The fiery and ferocious Coco Gauff appeared human all of a sudden. Additionally, The balance of women's tennis seemed to be shifting throughout that first 30 minutes. The quiet before the storm started to break. The eruption was on its way. There was just one rally at first. 41 defiant shots. Momentum is defined by this type of rally. The type that changes everything you believe to be true. Coco Gauff had just lost the serve. In an attempt to slow down the fading rhythm, she stood at the baseline and spun her racket. Vekić Eala was staring at her from across the internet. No grin, no emotion. Just that continuous, unwavering heat. The initial serve was delivered forcefully. A blur in the distance. Gauff's signature power. Deep to the backhand, Eala caught it perfectly. The back and forth, forehand, backhand, and cross-court lines followed. Neither was retreating. After every exchange, the audience gasped, as the tempo increased with each shot. Then it took place. Eala moved in, saw the angle coming, and smashed a forehand down the line with such force that it painted the baseline's edge. The tension was broken by the umpire's call. Eala, game. Something shattered in the air, the audience roared, and Gauff froze. That point altered everything, not just the outcome of a game. Coco appeared uncertain for the first time during the game. Her gaze darted to her box in search of comfort. Her instructor gave a slow applaud, but it was clear from his demeanor. This was not intended to occur. Eala, meanwhile, casually made her way to her chair and took a sip of water, her expression unreadable. Commentators attempted to explain it. One said, "Maybe golf is adjusting." Another murmured, "Eala's playing out of her mind." However, they were unaware that this was not a fortunate run. It was a tactic. Eala had studied golf. She was aware of the pressure spots. She didn't always choose winners. She waited until Gauff had little room to breathe, making mistakes and tightening the angles. Mostly there for Gauff, the audience started to get agitated. When Eala's winners struck clean, there were gasps, murmurs, and even apprehensive cheers. A quick exchange at 4-1 in the first set completely altered the mood. Gauff yelled in exasperation after missing a standard backhand and slammed the ball against the net post. The arena went silent when the umpire gave a warning. Eala simply looked aside, straightened her wristband, and made her way to the baseline without responding. Because it was now psychology rather than merely competence, that moment revealed to the world who was in charge. Gauff's facial expressions all contributed to Eala's serenity. Alex grew colder the more Coco attempted to energize herself. It was a startling contrast. One player is controlling time, while the other is chasing rhythm. The subsequent games flew by. Eala's retaliations were harsh, accurate, and nearly surgical. She moved effortlessly in court. The audience was in disbelief as she broke for 5-1. People began using their phones to record what appeared to be history happening in real time. Is this actually taking place? A fan in the first row yelled. When the first set was over 6-1, the story had entirely changed. Words like dominant, thunderous energy were increasingly being used by commentators. She was aware that the match was not yet over, yet she never once smiled. Not until the very end. Gauff attempted to reset during the second set. A few good serves, a slower tempo, and deep breathes. However, momentum is an odd concept. It is difficult for it to return after it has shifted, and the spark had already become fire in Eala's eyes. Gauff's annoyance flared up once more by the fourth game. Eala's forehand touched the edge as she questioned a cue call. Gauff yelled, "Out." The umpire decided against it. Tension was in the air as the crowd jeered. Eala only nodded and got ready to serve once more. The illusion was totally shattered at that time. It wasn't a coincidence. This was sheer, systematic, inexorable dominance. Additionally, Eala used an ace down the tee to hold serve. Half in shock, half in admiration, the crowd rose once more. Since the young woman from Manila wasn't competing against Coco Gauff at the time, she was rewriting the story in real time, one game at a time, one comment at a time. She was playing against all the doubts that had ever been cast upon her. And it appeared as though she was winning for the first time. The atmosphere in the arena had drastically altered at the beginning of the second set. What had started out as a golf-friendly crowd had evolved into something wild, erratic, and electrifying. After each point, the sound of incredulity reverberated. The collective thinking was nearly audible. This is not possible. Eala had already broken serve once again and was up by a set. Her self-assurance had evolved into control, which was now perilous. It was subdued domination. Every motion felt deliberate, each rally concluded precisely. She merely turned, straightened her cap, and strolled back to the baseline without celebrating, yelling, or pumping her fist. The crowd erupted even louder because of the calmness and silence. Coco Gauff finally roared after a rare victory at 2-0. In an attempt to capitalize on the commotion, she waved her hands in the direction of the stands. The audience gave a response. Energy, chants, and cheers. Eala didn't flinch even when it seemed like the tide would flip for a brief period. She served wide on the very next point, dragged Gauff off the court, and ended with a crisp forehand into the open area. 9 seconds passed during the rally. The audience let out a gasp. Then one portion of the upper rows began to chant, albeit softly at first. Eala, Eala, Eala. At the stands, it became louder and realized she was no longer the only person in the crowd. The slump following each point loss. Eala responded with something sharper, quicker, and crueler each time she attempted to rally. In the middle of the game, social media started to buzz. Videos of Gauff's failed backhands and Eala's deft forehands swamped TikTok and X. This girl, who is she? One tweet was read. One more. Eala is acting as though she has something to prove, and she's doing just that. Eala's Gauff was popular by the middle of the second set. Throughout the show, shocked commentators muttered, "This is one of the strongest performances against Coco Gauff that we have witnessed in a long time." The anxiety had spread throughout the world and was no longer limited to the court. Gauff double-faulted at 4-1. She tossed back her head, clearly frustrated, as the crowd moaned. As composed as ever, Eala served once more after bouncing the ball 3 times. One more ace. 1. Cameras moved across faces as the crowd erupted, some applauding, some in disbelief. Eala's crew remained silent in the player box, watching her every move with their hands folded. Before the final game, they were aware of what was about to happen. Coco Gauff is serving to keep the game going. Shouting her name and pleading for a miracle, the crowd stood up. However, Eala's homecoming was brutal. Miracles don't happen